Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Don Gatlin. I'm the Customer Solutions Director here at Seabrooks. And we're going to get moving pretty quickly today because I know that you all are anxious to hear what our panelists have to say today. We have three people that have graciously given their time to share some best practices with us about how they've added efficiencies to their certification and our agency eligibility processes. And I am going to get started pretty quickly with that. The first person that I would like to introduce is Stan Holt. He's the Director of Regional Initiatives at United Way of the Greater Triangle in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. And Stan is going to show us how to think outside the box a little bit today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Stan. Stan?
Thanks, Don. So go ahead and go to the first slide. What I'm going to talk a little bit about today is our standards of partner agency accountability and what leads a particular agency to be a partner or not with our United Way. And currently we have 34 different standards that are part of that process, and you can see the 5 categories around which they are organized. You know, certainly there's the financial standards, which require looking at the budgets, legal standards, which are around making sure legal documentation is up to speed, governance-related things associated with the boards of directors, making sure there's a board descriptions, things like that, HR-related standards, and then we just have about 4 or 5 that just don't fall neatly into those categories. And those are the standards of accountability that we each use, or we use each year to determine if an agency, and go to the next slide, Don. We have 4 categories of agencies. One is an agency, what we call an agency of excellence, and they meet what we call best practices associated with those 34 standards of accountability, in and above to just kind of what the basic requirements are, which are then those that meet those basic requirements are considered certified. We have 2 categories: certified with qualifications. If you fall below those standards, you can be certified with qualifications, and you're part of our campaign process. And at this point, you can do that for a couple of years, and then when that verges on the 3rd year, they're really looking at then whether or not you can actually be decertified, or at that point, if you're not certified, you're not part of the campaign materials. So that's kind of the system. And 2 years ago, when we joined EC Impact, we wanted to put all of this information, we wanted to collect this electronically and store it on EC Impact, because we were using these big, huge notebooks and carrying those notebooks from meeting to meeting, and the notebooks would go to the agencies, they'd come back to United Way, and then they'd go to the volunteers, and then they'd come back to United Way. You had to make multiple copies of the notebooks, because we needed one here and one out in the field, and it was just kind of cumbersome. And so we used EC Impact to organize these documents and carry out this certification process. If you want to go to the next slide, Don. In the investment hierarchy, we created 3 investment processes. We created one for annual documents. We created documents for agencies of excellence that are optional, and we created permanent documents, and those are documents, you know, like your 501c3 that don't change. The optional documents are for those that they're just optional. if you're trying to go for those best practices. And so the first year, which was 2008, that we used this, we had, those 3 investment processes. This year, we simply added a 2009 annual documents process. So and then we just kept the optional Agency of Excellence process, and we kept the permanent process. And what we do is we add that investment process each year, and then the volunteer evaluates each of the first year they evaluated all 3. From now on, they really focus on those annual documents, but they do have the ability to go in and look at the optional and the permanent documents if there's been any changes. And what we do is we actually open those other 2 up on an agency-by-agency basis as modifications are needed. So that's really kind of the crux of how we do our certification. That's that piece. And Don, go ahead and go to the next slide. And so we've really found that there are a lot of benefits to this process. First of all, the notebook system is no longer needed, and it saves us money, it saves us time, paper, and most of all, it saves us filing space, because we had kept some of those documents over and over for 5 years, and that the amount of filing filing cabinet space that was relieved was incredible. We were able to require documents to be uploaded in order for people to submit their certification applications, whereas before, if you had a missing piece of information, you had to call the agency, they had to get it back to you, they had to fax it back to you, and you could spend hours, days, weeks trying to track that stuff down. And now, if the document's not there, they can't submit. So that kind of having required documents is helpful. It still doesn't we still have, occasionally we have trouble with the accuracy of that, and sometimes they'll submit the wrong document, but that's been minimal. Certainly, we found it easier. Sometimes we need a document for something that we need, and it's so much easier to retrieve from the electronic system. The other thing